Please, I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You can talk percentages, you can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
If you thought that there was no way that things could get worse for Donald Trump, we could see another scandal, that more chaos could arise in this current moment of devastation and humiliation for him, you would be wrong. Because things have gotten worse, fortunately for us and unfortunately for the Trump administration. Because today, Pete Hegseth was testifying before Congress, and as you can expect, it was a disaster. He was aggressive. He was caught in lies. He tried to filibuster and imploded. We're going to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you all, leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way in supporting the work that we are doing on this show. Now, Pete Hegseth was asked a lot of questions that led to his ultimate collapse before Congress. But the one that started it off from Congresswoman McCollum was maybe the most shocking of them all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, I plan to ask you some budget questions about the following: the cost of the Qatar plane, where the money from the Army's parade is coming from, or the National Guard deployments to the border, where that funding is coming from. I honor and celebrate the United States Army, but I'd like to know how much this parade is going to cost. I have sent the department letters on several occasions on this, and I'm still waiting for a response. But then something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed. And that is the President's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. Mr. Secretary, we're both from Minnesota. I was in the Twin Cities during the riots that followed the murder of George Floyd. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets for days. Governor Walz made the decision to call up the Minnesota National Guard. At no point did we need the citizens of Minnesota request that the Marines be deployed. Our state and local law enforcement, along with our National Guard, who have worked on crowd control, they were more than enough. They were more than capable of handling this situation. History has proven that law enforcement and the National Guard are more than capable of handling situations more volatile than what happened this weekend. We all see the continuous loops on TV, but this looks nothing like the George Floyd protests or the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 1992. Mr. Secretary, this is a deeply unfair position to put our Marines in. Their service should be honored. It should not be exploited. The President has issued an executive order and talked about deploying troops across the country. Los Angeles County has 17,000 law enforcement personnel, and the state of California has 24,000 National Guard troops. So that's why the Los Angeles Chief of Police to say, and I quote, "The possible arrival of federal military forces in Los Angeles is absent a clear coordination, presents a significant logistical operational challenge for those of us who are charged with safeguarding the city," the end of his quote. As I mentioned before, in Minnesota, we train for those things together. So there's no need for the Marines to be deployed. So here are my budget questions, though. What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget? Or the budget we're currently serving under? How much are these deployments going to cost for both the Marines and the National Guard? And what training or duties are not taking place because of these deployments? Where in your limited budget, sir, are you going to find, in the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or
Chairman,
Los
I have
Angeles.
limited time. I asked a budget
And they are
question.
being-
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe
Asked about the
ICE
budget.
agents should be
I
allowed to be
asked about
safe
the budget,
in doing
sir.
their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have
Chairman,
implemented.
If
The police chief
if,
said
Mr.
she was
Chairman,
overwhelmed,
if the Secretary's not
so we
going to
helped.
ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies,
Mr.
which is something the
Chairman,
National Guard and the Marine
I-
plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the
Chairman, ask for
ground.
budgetary. If he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it, both current and present.
Happy to
Thank
submit
you.
them for the record.
Gentlemen will
Clearly just an out-of-control individual, Pete Hegseth is melting down before our eyes, and I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone. This is an unstable individual who should have never been confirmed. It is crazy that Pete Hegseth is still Secretary of Defense, considering recent reporting we've read about how even Donald Trump has soured on him, but clearly understanding that is the case, he is trying to go even farther in kissing up to Trump, and it is the reason why he has been so aggressive in supporting his assault on peaceful protesters in LA. And Congressman Aguilar asked Pete Hegseth about that, and the answers were pretty shocking.
That there are moments where you make do as best you can temporarily, but we are ensuring they're housed, fed, water capabilities in real time from my office, because I care that much about the California Guard and the Marines and the men and women who are supporting our
wasn't true
ICE
as of
agents on the
yesterday, so
ground.
you should check
It's
with your
true
office.
every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that
Deployment last?
misrepresents how much we care about our troops
How
and
long
what
will
they're
the
doing to
deployment
defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this secretary and the
Mr.
chairman
Secretary,
and our
how long will
department.
the deployment last?
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers
What is the
know that we're not
estimated
going
cost?
anywhere.
What
We're
is the
here to
estimated-
maintain the peace on behalf of law enforcement
Secretary,
officers in Los Angeles,
appreciate
which
you
Gavin
answering the
Newsom
question.
won't do.
What is the estimated cost of the deployment for the Guard and the Marines to LA, and where's this funding coming from? Will it be coming from quality of life programs that affect our service members or our families? If you want to wait till I finish.
Before I hand it to-
the question,
before I-
such as updates, housing and barracks.
Before I hand it to Bryn, the insinuation that we're pulling money from housing and barracks in order to fund this is disingenuous and incorrect.
Donald Trump very clearly wants to create a military-style police state in Los Angeles. That is his inevitable goal here because he needs a distraction. So does Pete Hegseth. Of course they do. They have done disastrous jobs. They're completely incompetent. They want to shift our focus. And it's not just that Pete Hegseth has been texting war plans and throwing back genomics all the time. He's just also unable to run the Pentagon correctly. Even his closest aides and advisors, who have either quit or been fired for going public, are saying the same thing. He was called out for that by Rep. DeLauro right here.
Please, I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You can talk percentages, you can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
Congresswoman, we have the details and we will provide them
Then let's
for you.
have them before and my hope is that we could get to it before we go to a markup within a few hours here today. I yield back my time, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady yields.
Pete Hegseth's incompetence is staggering. It is shocking to say the least that this is the person who is supposed to be keeping us safe, really. Pete Hegseth, of all people, his incompetence is incredibly clear and is scarier every single day. But it shows what Donald Trump really wants out of his administration: loyalty. Loyalty is the only thing that matters, especially in the wake of the Elon Musk breakup. It's the reason Donald Trump was so furious, as we've previously reported, when Pete Hegseth was willing to show war plans, potentially with China, to Elon, which was a crazy thing. How is that not the scandal that did him in? How is that not the end of this for Pete Hegseth? But loyalty, that is what Donald Trump wants in this current moment, because he wants to coalesce all the power in our government and keep it centralized with him. Something that would be insane and scary with a regular wannabe dictator, but one like Donald Trump, who gets more extreme by the day. Because of his cognitive decline, that becomes terrifying. And it's something that we have to point out, the steps towards authoritarianism that run in lockstep with Donald Trump. Also losing his mind. These are not two separate ideas. These are two important ideas to keep in context as we call them out. And I think the mainstream media has completely failed to address the crisis of Donald Trump's clear cognitive decline. Because of course they're not worried about holding him accountable. They're reporting on the stories. They're not telling the important narratives that underline them. Why is Donald Trump in LA? He needs to distract. Why is Donald Trump increasingly sending National Guardsmen and women? Because he wants to pretend like he's getting some big win. That's simply not the case. Donald Trump is looking to distract because Donald Trump is failing right. Now that needs to be the message, because when we understand that's the message, we can also help people understand that Donald Trump is creating the chaos they see in their lives. Republicans always called the chaos of the Trump administration the mean tweets. It was the mean tweets. Oh, liberals are freaking out over the mean tweets. These aren't mean tweets. These are direct assaults on the free press, on peaceful protests for no reason other than to satisfy Donald Trump's whims, which become increasingly extreme as he loses his mind. That's the central narrative here. We're going to be calling it out on the show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.